General stores are one of the most unassuming typologies found within the city. Historically, the general store was an outpost, making a way for what were called settlers or pioneers. These structures were nostalgically remembered as storefronts, where essential materials could be purchased by individuals developing new unoccupied lands. The reality of their existence was more complicated. The black and white image on the left shows a general store from the mid to late 1800s. While it appears to be in the middle of nowhere, it's in reality located on sovereign territory promised to Native Americans. The store was one of the first moments that promise was broken, since general stores inserted into this condition were not for those who were already there, but were built in anticipation for those yet to arrive. The general store became the center or the starting point of towns and cities, outposts meant to supplant existing conditions while paving the way for the development of a new network of cities. Dollar General calls itself today's general store. It operates similarly in the context it inserts itself into, with a very telling difference. It's not the progenitor of new development, except that of its own. But it thrives within the same unassuming small box that was used in the 1800s, this deceptively humble form that allows Dollar General to have maximum impact wherever it's inserted. But first, a little bit more about the data about Dollar General.
From the discipline's perspective, Dollar General is an easy target. Its aesthetics are easily dismissed. Its blandness and lack of character, clearly not within many definitions of architecture worth paying attention to. Yet its unassuming nature conceals its true ugliness. Currently numbering around 17,000 stores, Dollar General is extremely disruptive to local economies, both rural and urban. Local grocers, unable to buy from wholesalers, simply cannot compete with Dollar General's prices. Their sales typically drop 30% after DG opens. DG's small size allows it to be nimble in a way that big boxes cannot. At an average size of 7,400 square feet, the small box can slip through zoning and regulatory approvals easily. Many jurisdictions, desperate for any investment, welcome DG into their community. Yet DG's model is fundamentally extractive. Its sales are driven by tricking consumers through offering lower overall prices at a higher unit cost. It locates itself in areas where people cannot easily leave the neighborhood to buy what they need, either through distance in rural areas or due to lack of transportation options in urban ones. Forcing out its competition, DG creates and perpetuates food deserts by offering frozen and packaged foods. Fresh vegetables, fruit, or meat are almost non-existent, even in rural communities actually producing this food. To operate its stores, DG uses a lean labor model that exploits salaried managers, operating with 8 to 9 staff versus 14 for a small independent grocery store. Especially in urban areas, the short-staffed store then creates an environment where violent crime can proliferate. The stores notoriously have poorly placed cameras, limited staffing, and high staff turnover. This effective model results in Dollar General's status as an unassuming power center in our communities. As a threat to their resiliency, it is helpful for us to understand how DG works. Through a second-year design studio, we explored one instantiation of Dollar General in Cimarron Plaza in Stillwater, Oklahoma. The specificity of this context reveals DG's power in overcoming many common limitations of retail development. While dollar stores are ubiquitous and commonplace in the United States, their familiarity masks the complexity and sophistication of the networks that make them possible. Headquartered in Goodlettsville, Tennessee, Dollar General is composed of thousands of sites strategically located throughout the United States. To understand Dollar General in Cimarron Plaza, we need to look at how it fits within this much larger system. A section of the studio visualized DG's infrastructure at different scales: country, state, city, development, and building. At the national scale, we see an infrastructure of distribution centers, interstate highways, and local stores. This massive scale allows DG to have significant buying power. We can see that DG is aggressively expanding in small towns throughout Oklahoma, bolstered by the expansion of its distribution center in Ardmore. Its weak attempts at community investment are far outweighed by its negative effects on local communities. In fact, Community activists in Tulsa have fought new dollar stores from adding to the over 50 existing dollar stores in the city. In the small college town of Stillwater, 25,000 residents and approximately 20,000 students, there are 7 dollar stores, 5 Dollar Generals. In fact, one was completed since this work was done in spring 2021, as well as competitors Dollar Tree and Family Dollar. That DG can thrive in Cimarron Plaza is perhaps most striking. Purchased by Stillwater Public Schools in 2012, the 32-acre development is in limbo and awaiting further investment by the school district. Current tenants are few and far between, and upgrades to the development are kept to the bare minimum, given the site's interim use. Despite rock bottom leasing rates, few retailers can survive in this dismal context. Yet DG thrives in this location through its distributed infrastructure as one of 17,000 other stores. Here, the tenant fit-out itself was kept to the bare minimum, with the racks, shelves, and signage establishing brand identity and consistency.
Part of the reason it's able to survive and its ability to interiorize all the elements of typical Main Street without needing to maintain a relationship with other businesses or entities in the city. Typically, a city is made up of multiple structures that connect and link together to form larger wholes. Architect and theorist Fumihiko Maki, in his book Investigations into Collective Form, implores architects to understand and consider how their projects relate to the city beyond the construction of a single building. Groups of buildings and quasi-buildings connect to each other in meaningful ways. Examples like main streets are comprised of multiple entities that work together formally and programmatically to create an architectural space where culture occurs. Cimarron Plaza manipulates Maki's principles of collective form through concentrating the entities of a main street into a single development. While collective form allows each structure to be important, it does this through unifying them with connections like sidewalks, plazas, and aligned flat storefronts. DG, in contrast, consolidates the multiple structures from the collective form of the city into one small box store, drawing from its vast infrastructure outside of the local store. Dollar General inverts the model of collective form by taking all the elements of the town, all of its characters, and interiorizing them. In a sense, Dollar General packs the whole street into its small box. We even see this in the interior's materiality. What DG does programmatically and culturally, which is reductive in the context of the cities and towns it inserts itself into, it also does with its materiality. Although a roof encloses the space, metal siding is brought into the store interior as the city is inverted into the small box.
DG's threat to local communities is clear, and the business model seems almost unstoppable. So how can architects engage the immense scale of the problem to actually have impact? As a profession, we could critique its ugly aesthetics, decry its bad urbanism, or simply ignore it. Yet it is no less intentional or designed than other buildings. Or we can advocate for design guidelines that require DG to modify its stores to be more contextual by adding some lick and stick stone or red brick for Oklahoma. Grassroots efforts design a better store, more contextual, more community-based, while interesting on a local level, are completely insufficient to address the vastness of the issues at hand. Maybe more promising is to join our neighbors in Tulsa in protesting future development of DG. As architects, we can provide important information and context to educate local communities about the negative impact of the small box.
Architects can also utilize urban data analysis tool platform to consider the dynamic relationship of urban form and its organization. So data analysis looks at the spatial applications of computation and data analysis to expand the spectrum of architectural research and visualize the overlapping aspects of our daily life and their interaction within our towns and cities. This emerging technology enhances feasible planning strategies and activates social connectivity, ultimately empowering local jurisdictions to make data-driven decisions about future development.
Further, architecture provides a way of considering projective and speculative speculative alternatives. In the studio referenced earlier, we explored the potential for architecture to produce a critical project through multiple formats. The first project interrogated the site. While one section explored the site through mapping exercises related to the infrastructure of DG, as previously shown,
another section considered Cimarron Plaza as a collection of architectural characters. This section investigated the typological forms, programmatic uses, and connections created by and between the architectural characters that inhabit Cimarron Plaza, considering how individual structures aggregate into larger collectives in the city.
A third section considered the power structures at the local and global level, and it illustrates how cities are shaped by forms of collectivity, politics, culture, economic, and social impact. Powerful institutional systems result in uneven development, social inequity, and other disparities that implements discriminatory and extractive practices. Saxon argued cities are places wherein the combination of complexity and incompleteness also lies the possibilities for those without power to be able to assert the collective power of ownership of ordinary people. This lays the groundwork for how architecture can contribute and even harness emerging design practices to question and confront their pitfalls.
The second project focused on space and subverted the Dollar General model of being an internalized character in the city by placing value on cultural production or art space instead of economic value. It especially shifted the internalistic valuation of Dollar General by critiquing and speculating an alternative spatial condition based on a single object from the store. These projects weren't concerned with selling that product as much as understanding the product's role in the larger context of the city and culture. A skin and structure project then explored this idea of cultural space even further by creating an outdoor venue for two of the other characters in the shopping center, the church and the cafe. The schemes critiqued the existing Dollar General condition by purposely thinking about how these two structures could literally reach out toward each other, creating links across the deserted parking lot.
the students' representations and speculative design work was then exhibited in Cimarron Plaza using the empty storefronts. The exhibition activated the site through an event that mimicked the unassuming qualities so impactfully utilized by DG, but again subverted it by allowing the critical projects of the studio to be the emphasis. The exhibition took the medium of activism, the modes of architectural representation, and empty storefronts surrounding DG to create a dialogue initiated by the studio. The exhibition is unassuming, yet provides critique of the reductive inversion of the city found in DG by actually creating only cultural interactions within the vacant storefronts surrounding DG. While the threat of the small box is significant, we remain optimistic about the unique contribution discipline can make in supporting activism, creating representations of complex realities, and speculating about alternatives. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to the conversation.